Hello and welcome to the first episode of my video series called Wuthering Waves Deep Dive, in which I delve into lore analysis and theories of the game Wuthering Waves. In this first episode, I'll be talking about theories regarding Cartethyia, Imperator, Order of the Deep, and the Threnodians. Just a warning that this whole video will contain a lot of spoilers, including quests in Rinascita that some people might not have done yet. Cartethyia. Cartethyia was said to be the holy title of a peasant named Fleur-de-Lis. She got drunk with the sacramental wine during Imperator's gratitude rite and was punished by the order with 3 days of confinement. Despite that, she was soon chosen as a blessed maiden who came to rule Rinascita, it seems, for some time. The name Fleur-de-Lis clearly derives from the symbolic fleur-de-lis or fleur-de-lis with lis at the end. Fleur-de-lis is a stylized illustration of a lily or iris. Perhaps this is why we see lilies in the cutscenes of Fleur-de-Lis' story as well. It has many symbolic meanings throughout history. In Rome, it was said to mean fidelity and unity among the people. And I think this is why Fleur-de-Lis or Cartethyia was foretold to be the one who will make Imperator whole again. There's a legend regarding Fleur-de-Lis pertaining to the baptism of King Clovis I, who became the first king of France. Supposedly an angel in the form of a dove brought a golden lily from the tears Eve had shed when she left the Garden of Eden. This golden lily was then interpreted as a symbol of his purification, since it was brought during his baptism, which is a cleansing rite from original sin. The lily has become a symbol of cleansing in Catholic traditions. As a result, the Fleur-de-Lis icon now, though, is a Catholic symbol for the divinity, and it represents both the Holy Trinity and the Blessed Virgin Mary, who is a model of immaculate purity. In WuWa, it's possible that Fleur-de-Lis was meant to characterize purity, with her childlike fascination in dancing or having fun. However, as I said, Fleur-de-Lis can be viewed as a stylized image of an iris too. Iris and lily are both in the same family of flowers. Specifically, Fleur-de-Lis symbolizing the iris has been used as a part of the civil flag of Florence because white irises were abundant in the city. Fleur-de-Lis as the Blessed Maiden is like the iris. She is not only an important figure in Ragusa, which seems to be inspired by the real-life Florence and Venice, but also an important presence in Rinascita. Another thing that's evident on Fleur-de-Lis' outfit, though, is that she isn't wearing a crown made of laurel leaves. Instead, she is wearing a crown of thorns. In the real world, the crown of thorns has been a symbol of the suffering of Jesus Christ. It also symbolizes the mockery of Jesus as a heavenly king. It's become a metaphor of a savior as well, which is what Fleur-de-Lis is characterized in the first premis's words, Napoli's prophecy. The fact that Fleur-de-Lis has a crown of thorns can also mean that it is a symbol of her sacrifice, sacrifice being another meaning attributed to Jesus' crown of thorns. We've seen Fleur-de-Lis in the visions shown to us by the Wuthering dancer in Ragusa, and she was impaled by light there. This symbolic meaning will also be connected with another topic I'll be discussing later in this video. Interestingly, we see the crown of thorns on Phoebe's hat as well as on remnant creatures. The meaning for them could be different then. Perhaps it might mean that they're tied to something. Phoebe being tied to the Order's rules, Lorelei being tied to Nimbus' sanctum, and Fleur-de-Lis specifically could also be tied to something. I believe she's what Imperator meant by the lost, that us rovers must find. But how she is lost is something we still have to discover. Also, in the vision that was shown to us by the Wuthering dancer, it was shown that Fleur-de-Lis was chained to something. So that was probably why she has the crown of thorns. She's tied up basically, she's chained. But there's another use for the crown of thorns, it seems. Since when us rovers are crowned as a laureate at the carnival, we were given a crown of thorns instead of a crown of laurel leaves. In the real world, a crown of laurel, or the laurel wreath, is actually a symbol of victory, and the laurel itself is a symbol for the god Apollo, because the person he loved became a laurel tree. So he's often depicted wearing a wreath of it. He's also the god of sports, and one of the competitions in ancient Greece was held in his honor, so laurel wreaths as crowns of victory were given because of him. The fact that fleur-de-lis doesn't have a laurel wreath, and that the crown we were given as the laureate is a crown of thorns, just like what fleur-de-lis has right now, can mean that the Imperator we speak to isn't really Imperator the Sentinel. Or it is Imperator, but without a connection to the mortal realm because they are imprisoned somewhere. Perhaps it takes some full power for Imperator to conjure a laurel wreath instead of a crown of thorns. Or it means Imperator is also tied to something, which I will explain later. Before we move on to discussing Imperator, as mentioned at first, Fleur-de-Lis became drunk with the sacramental wine, and she was punished for her actions by the order. But in her drunk dancing and the playing of the sacred horn, it's possible that she was able to commune with Imperator through the wine. And since she was the best performer even while drunk, with people literally joining her lead in the revelry, it makes sense the Sentinel noticed her. This wine she drank could be gocce di divino, which can be literally translated as divine drops. It's also called nectar wine or harvest wheat. In myths in the real world, it's been said that nectar is a drink of the gods, as well as a drink of eternal life. We've been told that Fleur-de-Lis has been dead for many years now. If we saw her rather corporeal form after the carnival, maybe she's still alive because of that particular wine she drank before? On the other hand, there seems to be also two versions of Cartethyia or Fleur-de-Lis, one smaller and seemingly younger, while the other one taller and much older. Could the younger one be the Fleur-de-Lis who got drunk with sacramental wine, and the older one the Fleur-de-Lis or Cartethyia who ruled Rinascita for some time? I think we'll get a better grasp as we discuss Imperator. Imperator. When it comes to Imperator, there's a lot we still don't know about them. From the Codex of the Order of the Deep, it's been said that Imperator has the ability to split things. It was said that they split the land from the sea. In the real world, the word Imperator is actually a title conferred to someone who's like a commander in the Republic of Rome. It's a title given to someone who is a victorious general, basically, someone who won a lot of battles or won a war. It later became the first name of Roman emperors at some point, and only emperors could hold such titles. In WuWa, that's not quite the case. It's used as the name of Rinascita's Sentinel, instead of just being a title. We don't know if it's the first or last name, just like WuWa. Now, what we know of how Imperator looks like is usually through the statues in Rinascita. In Ragusa, specifically, we see them as the winged hippocampus, like in a statue inside the Cathedral of Mercury. In the real world, the hippocampus are fish-tailed horses said to be the mounts of sea nymphs and or gods, and usually live in oceans. Interestingly, the hippocampus is actually thought of as a symbol for Jesus, because of its dual nature, just like Jesus is always thought of as both human and divine. But isn't sure if Imperator in WuWa is really a winged hippocampus though, and that's because the statues and images of Imperator throughout Rinascita are inconsistent. There seems to be 4 images of Imperator throughout Rinascita. One is a winged hippocampus with horns, another is a winged hippocampus without horns, then there's a hippocampus without both horns and wings, and a horned sea creature without wings, and definitely not like a horse. Someone from the Black Shores named Ariosto said that the image of Imperator in their data is different from the statues, but it's unclear how different the statues are exactly, and if it's possible one of these images could at least have some or all parts correct. Which is the real image of the Imperator? Since nobody has seen them, it's possible that none of the horse statues are the correct image. However, the cutscene stories we see, especially the one from the stained glass at the Tower of Ruins, show that it's possible Imperator was either a fish-tailed pegacorn, that is, a hybrid of a unicorn and Pegasus and a fish, or a sea monster that might be based on the sea serpent, Leviathan, which is also the name of this sea monster, thought of as the Threnodian by some people in Rinascita. There are theories, though, that the horse-like divinity, Imperator, might be a Threnodian, while the Leviathan is actually the Sentinel. But there's also a possibility that both divinities are Threnodians, so neither of them are the Sentinel. The Sentinel has always been called as such because it is a guardian of a specific region, so while it is powerful, it can hardly be called a divinity in a sense. The circumstances might differ in every region since Wong. Besides that, anyone can be thought of as a divinity if the public benefited from some miracle or chance related to such a divine being. In the real world, a driftwood washed away from the shore can be worshipped by the people as a god, if it resembled a statue of one, and so on. So, Threnodians can be worshipped just the same. Blind faith works like that too in the real world, and truth can be stranger than fiction. Also take note that in the stained glass cutscene narrated by Carlotta, Napoleon II, the first Primus, had talked about the divinity who was once whole and rent by warring creeds. It's not clear whether the two divinities are what this whole divinity was split into. Rent by warring creeds can be interpreted as torn apart by conflicting beliefs, meaning that it could be both metaphorical too. But it seems like it is more of a physical division, or the conflicting beliefs led to this physical division of the divinity. How the splitting of this divinity came to be is still unknown, but since we know now that Imperator has the ability to split anything, they might have split their own self. Now, there are theories though that the Imperator's image that the Order has paraded might be a Kelpie, and this Kelpie is a Threnodian and not Imperator, the Sentinel. A Kelpie is a shape-shifting water spirit in Scottish folklore that haunts different bodies of water. It transforms into a beguiling horse, or sometimes a human being, to lure and drown people to their death. This theory stems from the fact that a code given by one of the crew robots at the Black Shores talked about not trusting the horse. This warning reminds me of the Trojan horse, which is a wooden horse used by the Greeks during the Trojan War to enter Troy and win that particular war. The Trojan horse has become a symbol of trickery or deception, as well as a strategy of tricking your enemy in order to corner them. While Kelpie is indeed likely, I have doubts about it. However, if it is really the Threnodian, the Kelpie should be imprisoned near a body of water. I feel like some transportation issues come into play if this Kelpie is the one acting as Imperator, who's imprisoned at the castle in the sky. Can a Kelpie even survive being away from fresh water or waters on land? Till this belief can be suspended, I can't help but ask such questions. And this doubt of a supposed Imperator imposter leads me to my own theory of what Imperator actually looks like, and it's neither a horse nor a sea monster. Instead, I think the current Imperator looks like a sylph. A sylph comes from the Greek word sylpha, which means butterfly. A sylph supposedly lives in the skies, being 1,000 years old without growing old. Besides that, a sylph can shapeshift into an angel, a fairy, or a human. A specific characteristic of sylph, though, is that they're invisible to humans, but they do have humanoid figures that are said to be bigger and stronger than humans. Does that ring a bell to you? That's right, the sylph seems to fit the description of Cartethyia, and unlike Gypsy, who needed Rover's help to transfer the temporal mandate, Cartethyia might have not needed the same conditions. After all, it seems like Imperator is not a sentinel made by us rovers. Thereby, we might not have the same authority in Rinascita as in Wong Long. If Imperator is a sylph, it makes sense then why no one has ever seen them, due to their invisibility to humans. Besides that, sentinels do not always have to be in the form of dragons. As long as they're meant to guard a certain place with a specific strong power and reverence of the people, it's possible one becomes a sentinel in succession that way. This theory, of course, conflicts with what we know. That is, it conflicts with the given possibility that Cartethyia is a resonator of either the Sentinel or Threnodian or both. However, all the information we've been given or led to believe can still be false. That is why the possibility of Cartethyia as a current Sentinel is not impossible. Besides that, with the revelation of two forms of Cartethyia, that of a younger and adult version, it is possible that she has become the divinity who is rent by warring creeds. She could be both the Sentinel and the Resonator then. If the lost that Imperator wants us to find is the younger Cartethyia, wouldn't it make sense that the Imperator we hear is the older Cartethyia, who wants to merge and be whole again with her younger self? Another possibility is that Cartethyia might have become the Threnodian, or a part of it, as she was martyred 20 years before the Rinascita main quest. That means that she has become one with the frequencies, or the mist, and has transformed in one way or another as an amalgamation of the Threnodians and Sentinel. If you've played one of Rinascita's quests at the Phagasave Peninsula, you might realize that it seems to be a parallel of what is happening with the two divinities and Cartethyia. The Oak Tree, or the Quercus, is supposedly the embodiment of the divinity. Besides that, there is a logo on a banner at Oakhart High Court that shows the fleur-de-lis and a very different image of Imperator as the branches and leaves of the oak tree. From the stone tablets, it's said that each scar on the Quercus or oak tree bears an oracle or prophecy. The scar is meant to be the carving of the first divine oracle on the oak tree trunk, and from the carvings, a mistletoe was said to have grown and borne fruit. Now, this connection between the mistletoe and oak tree actually has a real-world relation. There's what is called the ritual of oak and mistletoe, which is a Celtic ceremony where someone cuts the mistletoe that grew on a sacred oak tree, sacrifices 2 white bulls, and uses the mistletoe to make an elixir for fertility and an antidote for poisons. It's possible that in WuWa, the ones sacrificed in this ritual, which was probably led by the Primus, were Imperator, Leviathan, and Cartethyia, and Primus ate the mistletoe berry or viscum berry that grew from the oak. The mistletoe or viscum berry growing from the oak tree's oracle carvings was said to be the fruit of wisdom, and eating them grants spiritual enlightenment. From the quest at the Oakhart High Court, the Primus was talking to an acolyte about making a wine out of viscum berry, which made the acolyte shocked because it's been hailed as sacred fruit. From this, it's possible that Fenrico thought of himself as the enlightened one, because he might have eaten the oak tree's viscum or mistletoe berry. Looking at the logo on the banner again, the fleur-de-lis seems to have a hilt of a sword on top, even looking like a part of a sword. It could be a depiction of fleur-de-lis being impaled. Thereby, this cutscene montage could be the sacrifice part of the ritual of oak and mistletoe. However, the fleur-de-lis always looks like a lily or iris with 3 petals. So once again, this might symbolize 3 entities being stabbed by a sword, and as a result, 3 entities being sacrificed. The imprisoned echo you fight during the quest at Oakhart High Court also might be analogous to Cartethyia's imprisonment, as we see her chained in the montage of her impalement. There's also the symbolism of the white piece and black piece, and I think these 2 pieces were meant to symbolize the 2 divinities. According to another set of voices during this quest, the black piece is meant to embody mortal desires and worldly needs, while the white piece will guide the faithful of Reguna on the right path. The black piece is clearly the Leviathan, while the white piece is Imperator. There's another image of Imperator that seems to be a clearer view than the one on the Oakhart High Court's banner, and that is the one on the dais of Shores of Last Breath, where you'll see the same banner. You see a trio of what seems to be a horned sea creature. The thing that's surprising about this is that this place is supposedly Imperator's last sighting. And why does the dais have an image of the sea creature? Is it a sea creature, or are those webbed hands its wings? The banner at Oakheart High Court appears like Imperator is a horned dragon, but this dais shows they're a horned serpentine sea monster. This means, once again, that the image of Imperator that the Order has circulated throughout Rinascita is contradictory, and one possible reason for that is the fact that Rinascita has been ruled by different people the past decades, and not present. Napoleon II, the first Primus, then the Holy Maiden, then Fenrico. Oakheart High Court and Shores of Last Breath. The connection between these two places is also uncanny. I mentioned the ritual of oak and mistletoe earlier, and I think the Shores of Last Breath shows exactly what might have happened. On a dais, there are two sets of text. One set of text is inside a big circle, and surrounds a small circle like sun rays. Each of the sun ray is composed of one word, and these are the words in the English alphabet. Two of these words can be translated from Italian, pescare, meaning to catch fish. This word, I believe, should be corrected to cavallo, meaning horse, a Kuro typo, I guess. Innis, on the other hand, can mean island, when translating from Scottish. Inispe, on the other hand, has no direct translation, but I believe it's supposed to be like that because I think it's jumbled. The text on the other circle has no space, so the text that looks like sun rays seems like one word only. But this might be a trick, because inispe can be rearranged into insepi. In Latin, it can mean to shut in, inside, or within. Altogether, I believe we can infer that the text around the small circle says, the horse caught the fish, shut in, inside the island. This is of course just a theoretical translation, but I am basing it off the Latin sentence structure, and this is the most reasonable translation I can get. One thing to note though is that I believe both the horse and fish were sealed in on the said island. That is, the two divinities have both been trapped. And that's because the Oakheart High Court quest with the game of white piece and black piece with the imprisoned echo seems to be a parallel to what truly happened among the two divinities, Leviathan and Imperator, and Fleur-de-Lis. If you recall, I also said that Imperator might be tied to something. That's why the crown we were given at the carnival was not a crown of laurel but a crown of thorns. And I believe this theory answers why that might be as well. Now, on the outer circle, these are the words which I might be pronouncing wrong. Viscio, Inis, Pescare, Cavallo. Now this outer text is what connects Shores of Last Breath to Oakheart High Court, because Viscio means mistletoe in Italian, and the theoretical translation of this text is, the horse caught the fish in the island with mistletoes. The island with mistletoes is Fagassei Peninsula, and more specifically, the Oakheart High Court. Now, how does this connect to the ritual of oak and mistletoe I talked about earlier? My theory is that both divinities, the horse and the fish, were sealed by the Primus using their ritual of oak and mistletoe. Specifically, I believe they were both sacrificed along with Fleur-de-Lis. In the real ritual, 2 white bulls were sacrificed, but in WuWa, I believe it were the 2 divinities and Fleur-de-Lis who were sacrificed, and whatever remains of them, their spirit or soul, were sealed in a castle in the sky. That's why I believe we saw the banner with Fleur-de-Lis with sword hilt, because we saw from one of the visions that Fleur-de-Lis was impaled. These 2 divinities might be both Threnodians. Fleur-de-Lis, whom I believe is still the current sentinel, or at least a successor, has probably in one way or another merged with the Threnodians as a result of this sacrifice. Think back on what we know of how Tacit Discords and Threnodians come to be. They're all an amalgamation of frequencies in Solaris 3. I think it's possible that because Fleur-de-Lis didn't die after she was sacrificed, and possibly merged with the Threnodians, a part of her was sealed in a castle in the sky, and a part of her was lost, and the lost one is manifested as her younger self. This splitting of Cartethyia might be due to the fact that the older Cartethyia needed to be purified before she could merge with her younger self. Overall, I feel like the original Imperator being replaced by Cartethyia as a sentinel seems plausible. There's still doubts if the Imperator we communed with during the carnival was the real one, but if that was the older Cartethyia who's probably imprisoned at the castle in the sky, it's probably not a bad thing. You might think, but what about the second awakening? I think there might be a difference between Rinascita's change of sentinel or god compared to Wanglong's change of power. For one, the circumstances are different. 2. If Fleur-de-Lis has merged with the Threnodians, it's possible that her succession as sentinel has caused resistance within her, and thereby she has split into the older and younger versions of herself. We can infer that it might be to preserve some semblance of sanity, or to save a part of her, so Rover can help the sentinel become whole again. It's also possible that the mysterious pact with Imperator has something to do with all of this as well. Order of the Deep. The Order of the Deep is like the real-world Holy See, which is the central governing body of the Catholic Church, headquartered at the Vatican City in Italy. Though a bit far-fetched, there's what's called an Ancient Order of the Deep card, given to sailors as initiation to those entering navies of some countries. So maybe that's a reference for the name and how Imperator is closely related to the sea. As we find out in the main quest, the Order of the Deep was founded by Napoleon II to rebuild Rinascita after the Dark Tide, and so he became the first Primus. The Primus acts like the Pope in the real world, but Primus is actually a term for the presiding bishop of the Scottish Episcopal Church. That is, Primus is a term for Protestant clergy, not a Catholic one. Knowing that, doesn't it seem contradictory as a reference? In any case, I have a theory regarding Fenrico that will connect him to one of the bosses in the game. Upon research, Fenrico is actually a unique name, but I have a hunch that it is a combination of F and Enrico. F stands for false or fake, and Enrico can mean king in Italian. So together, I believe Fenrico is the fake king, and this is where Hecate comes in. Hecate is one of the weekly bosses in WuWa, but in the real world she's known as the ancient Greek goddess of magic, moon, and night, among other things. But Hecate in WuWa, though, is supposedly based on Macbeth. There are a lot of Macbeth references in the main quest, actually, and specifically more so when we meet Prolova. Our fight with Hecate in the main quest is actually one of the important Macbeth references. Specifically, Hecate in WuWa herself is meant to represent the three witches in Macbeth, who appear throughout the story, bringing prophecies about the titular character. Hecate's design, skills, and movesets actually reference what the three wayward sisters in Macbeth are based upon, the three fates. Hecate has spinning moves, which is a reference to Clotho, the spinner, the fate or Moirai, who spins the thread of mortal life. She also has a rod for legs, which is a reference to Lachesis, the portioner, the fate who measures the thread of human lifespan. And Hecate's spinster-like skirt, which cuts us down, is a reference to the fate named Atropos, the inflexible one who cuts the thread, a euphemism for death. There are three apparitions or appearances in Macbeth, and each apparition brings a set of prophecies. In WuWa, on the other hand, there are three prophecies, which are narrated during our fight with Hecate. I'll enumerate and summarize them in simpler terms. The first prophecy talks about the following. The person who ascends the throne, and thereby rule Rinascita, must sacrifice the Holy Maiden and all heretics to strengthen his or her position. In other words, the ruler of Rinascita would have to be a bloody tyrant. The fact that Fenrico might have done something towards Fleur-de-Lis is also possible because in the unfinished script that Cristoforo gave us, it shows that Fleur-de-Lis went alone to the shores of Last Breath to find a way to meet the Sentinel up in the high heavens and save Rinascita. And the most interesting info from the script, Fenrico, who was just a priest back then, was said to be stationed there at the shores of Last Breath. It wouldn't be surprising then that he might be a witness of Fleur-de-Lis's death, and possibly the one that led to it. From the discussion before, I also think Fenrico sacrificed the two divinities, and the heretics are those called fools and sent to pilgrim sale. As what we have seen of him so far, Fenrico seems so detached and unapproachable with the way he acts. Our first interaction with him seems highly suspicious and calculated. He was also the type to simply watch what was happening at the carnival, and the fact that he might be in cahoots with Atraxitus is quite a big giveaway. It's therefore easy to conclude that he might be one of the villains in Rinascita. The second prophecy, meanwhile, can be summed up as follows. This bloody tyrant must change history in order to dispel all illusions and find favor with his or her people. So that means the bloody tyrant has to rewrite history of Rinascita in order to be praised and revered by the people of it. This prophecy has clearly happened, as we learn from the Black Shore's member that the Imperator's image in Rinascita is different from the Black Shore's database. There's also the fact that in the Transgressor's transcript, one of the Thessalian family members talked about how information regarding the Sentinel became twisted. That includes the statues, the anecdotes, and the proverbs. And this all changed after the election of Fenrico as the new Primus, which means he might have a big hand on the rewriting of Rinascita's history, especially where the Sentinel was concerned. What he told us about Fleur-de-Lis being the Threnodian's resonator also becomes more untrustworthy. It's apparent that he wanted us to oppose Fleur-de-Lis in one way or another, and even if he was correct about that, whatever he saw at the shores of Last Breath, there needed to be more explanation because Fleur-de-Lis clearly wanted to save Rinascita. The third prophecy, which Frolova tells us, hasn't happened yet, and it can be interpreted and summarized as getting the throne using sacrifice must end in sacrifice. Basically, what comes around goes around. But instead of the bloody tyrant suffering for his crimes, it's the people he's ruling who are going to suffer. In the recent quest, The Old Man and the Whale, we found out that Cetus could create a tempest if it goes into a rampage. So during the carnival, if the Lycoris was not removed from Cetus, there would have been people who died and the entirety of Reguna might have been submerged underwater. This third prophecy has not happened in patch 2.0, but it might still be the main problem of us rovers, and we'll have to deal with it in the final main quests in Rinascita. Going a bit off tangent, all over Rinascita we see a lot of things that are in trees. Hecate talk about 3 prophecies. There are 3 circles in the days at shores of Last Breath, as well as repetitions of text and images 3 times in each of the circles. At the Cathedral of Mercury, we also see the prevalence of 3s. There are 3 pairs of wings on this stained glass, which also shows 3 circles, 3 butterfly wings symbol, which could be another connection to the sylph, which, if you recall, means butterfly in Greek. Another interesting thing is that butterfly wings are a symbol of Psyche as well. Psyche, the Greek goddess of the soul. So this can mean there are 3 souls as well. We can definitely relate all these counts of 3 to the Holy Trinity, since Rinascita is clearly based on Italy and the Order of the Deep to the Holy See. In the real world, the Holy Trinity stands for the 3 roles of God who's worshipped in Catholicism. That is, God the Father, the Son, and the Holy Spirit. In WuWa, though, I believe the Holy Trinity consists of the 2 divinities, the so-called Leviathan of the sea and the Imperator of the skies, and Fenrico, the self-proclaimed enlightened one. Why are they the Holy Trinity in Rinascita? It's all because I speculate it's a reference to the 3 prophecies in the real world's Book of Revelation located in the New Testament of the Holy Bible. Each prophecy pertains to one beast. The first beast was said to be from the heavens. It was called the dragon, and was locked in the abyss for 1,000 years. I think we can say this is the reference for Imperator in Rinascita. Next, The second beast was said to have come out from the sea, and it was called, funnily enough, the Beast. In WuWa, this is the Leviathan. Lastly, the third beast was said to be from the earth, and it is called the False Prophet. This one is said to be the guy who forces people to make an image of the beast and force people to worship it. Sounds familiar? Exactly. It is obviously Fenrico. An interesting tidbit about this divine trinity in WuWa is that it's also a reference to the Western schism in the real world. The schism is a split in the Catholic Church. This split started when a bishop in France and Italy declared themselves as both the true pope. Then comes a third true pope, who is from Pisa. This third pope is actually called the anti-pope, and he called for a council meeting to set the score once and for all regarding who is the true pope. The result of the schism is that the anti-pope and the Roman pope were told to resign, while the French pope was excommunicated. Excommunication means someone loses their rights to participate in church activities and services. It's like a form of banishment, but in this case, one is basically barred from entering churches as well as going to masses. A new and different pope was then elected, bringing an end to the split to the Catholic Church. And I believe that this is what will happen in WuWa as well, but differently, of course. My theory is that we will fight the older Cartethyia and purify her frequency. Then, this older Cartethyia will merge with her younger self and become the enlightened one, as well as the new sentinel of Rinascita. Threnodian. What kind of Threnodian does Rinascita have? I believe it is the Threnodian of dreams and or sleep. As you recall, we had the Somnoir quest before Rinascita's patch, and this quest is actually included as one of the main quests. I believe this is not a coincidence, especially since Fleur-de-Lis actually dream about the Sentinel, if Christopher's script has any truth in it. The Elusia in the Somnoir are also definitely a reference to Somnia, which are the sons of the Greek god of sleep, Somnus. Another reason why I think we're dealing with a Threnodian of dreams and or sleep is a term for the new version of Overlord bosses. The word nightmare added to bosses like Inferno Rider and Thundering Mephis. I don't think that is a coincidence. Besides that, it's highly likely that Fleur-de-Lis, the one we saw, might be a wandering soul whose real body is currently imprisoned and dreaming. Perhaps this is another case of the Threnodian's ability in Rinascita as well. Another possibility is that the Threnodians in Rinascita are related to the gods Dionysus and Hermes. Dionysus due to the fact that the Sentinel Imperator, who might actually be a Threnodian, seems to love communicating with people through the carnival. Besides that, there's such a big importance of nectar wine and or winemaking there as well. Dionysus is the god of winemaking, festivity, and theater, among other things, so it's possible that Threnodian is related to him. Hermes, on the other hand, is known as the messenger of the gods, and judging by the fact that the Order of the Deep operates from the Cathedral Mercury, Mercury being the Roman counterpart of Hermes, it also makes sense if he is the reference for one of the Threnodians. I think the most obvious is that Leviathan might be related to Poseidon too, since he's the god of the sea and earthquakes. But also, Poseidon can be linked to the Order's image of Imperator, because Poseidon is also the god of horses, and as I mentioned earlier, sea gods usually ride on hippocampus when going anywhere. Now, in the trailer, why did the older Cartethyia call Rover a mighty god killer? I believe it is because we defeated the Dreamless, who is linked to the Threnodian of War, Ovatrax. Even possible, we might have been the one who killed Ovatrax and other Threnodians some time ago. I believe, though, that Rinascita is changing our view of Threnodians. That is, they're not always as bad as they're thought to be. What have we learned about Threnodians in Wanglong? They are said to be the strongest tacit discords, basically the top tier in the hierarchy of tacit discords. Interestingly, the name Ovatrax might actually be a reference to Trax, the son of Ares, the god of war, but it's also said that Trax is one of the names that Ares is called. So Ovatrax might not be based on his son, Trax, but Ares himself. What does this all mean? It means that the Threnodians are actually gods, and Rover is the mighty god killer, for killing or defeating Threnodians who are basically gods. However, I think Threnodians are the imperfect gods, and they're actually a reference from the novel Solaris, which was written by a famous sci-fi author named Stanislaw Lem. The world of WuWa is actually based on the novel Solaris, and it's about a planet called Solaris with an ocean as a sky. The protagonist in the novel, Kelvin, goes to a station by Solaris to study the planet itself, just like people already there. But he soon finds out that the ocean is producing formations that are called mimoids, and these mimoids copy anything, including humans, dead humans, from the memories of the researchers in the Solaris station. In other words, the tacit discords are based on mimoids in the novel. But I digress. The reason I said Threnodians are imperfect gods is because of this quote from the Solaris novel. I'm not thinking of a god whose imperfection arises out of the candor of his human creators, but one whose imperfection represents his essential characteristic. A god limited in his omniscience and power, fallible, incapable of foreseeing the consequences of his acts, and creating things that lead to horror. He is a sick god, whose ambitions exceed his powers, and who does not realize it at first. A god who has created clocks, but not the time they measure. He has created systems or mechanisms that serve specific ends, but have now overstepped and betrayed them. And he has created eternity, which was to have measured his power, and which measures his unending defeat. From this long quote, I think it's quite clear that Threnodians are imperfect gods, but also another thing is clear. Rover could be a Threnodian as well, especially since they have their own echo in the form of Abby. Abraxas, which is the complete name of Abby, is actually also called the god of time, because the letters of it equal to 365 in numerology in the real world. But Rover could be the Threnodian, though imperfect, who is trying to save the world instead of destroying it. If Rover is a Threnodian, doesn't that mean that a good Threnodian is possible? And that Rinascita could have a Threnodian transformed into a good one? Final remarks. To wrap up, here are my main theories overall in this video. 1. There are 2 Threnodians, and it's both Leviathan and Imperator. 2. Fleur-de-Lis is now the Sentinel, or the successor of the Sentinel. 3. Fleur-de-Lis was sacrificed by Fenrico through some kind of ritual of oak and mistletoe at the shores of Last Breath. 4. Rinascita's original Sentinel is a sylph and can shapeshift. As a sylph, they have the ability to be invisible and rule the skies as they want. 5. Fleur-de-Lis was given the Sentinel's power without the need for Rover's permission. 6. Fleur-de-Lis, possibly having the Sentinel's ability now, was split into an older and younger version of herself. Her older version is imprisoned while the younger one roams free. It's possible that her imprisoned body is sleeping and dreaming right now, and her younger self, which depicts her soul, is roaming around, lost. 7. Fleur-de-Lis has merged with some Threnodians through her sacrifice. 8. Fenrico is the anti-pope of Rinascita, the false prophet, who changed Imperator's image to suit his own agenda of, possibly, domination. 9. Threnodians are the imperfect gods of Solaris 3, and Rover are supposed to save people by killing or defeating the Threnodians and preventing another lament. This is why we are the mighty god killer. 10. Rovers are Threnodians, and thereby imperfect gods as well. Now, do you also think Rover is a Threnodian? We'll probably find out if this overarching theory of mine will be proven correct in the future. See you all on the next episode of Wuthering Waves Deep Dive.